Metropolitan Washington Air Quality Committee meeting of the new year. I'll be chairing MWAC this year with support from our vice chairs, Zachary Parker from the district, Alan Hugh from College Park, and Dave Snyder from Falls Church. First, I want to take a moment to recognize our newly appointed members. We have Jacinta Green from Alexandria, Amanda Stewart, Charles County, J.D. Spain, Arlington County, Amy Nessel, Greenbelt, Roger Slagle, Tacoma Park, Eric Olson, Prince George's County, Jenny Willoughby and Lauren Paulette, City of Frederick, Rachel McQuillan and Tom Peterson from Fairfax City, and Wanda Rogers from Bowie. So welcome to the new members. I and everyone look forward to working with you this year. So to start off, I want to ask the members to make sure you enter your name and affiliation in the chat box. The staff uses for attendance. As a reminder, use mute when not speaking, and you're encouraged to use the chat function to share with the participants in today's meeting. Also, please note that this meeting is being recorded. And as I understand it, Jen, we do not have any members of the public registered for comments. So if not, we'll move to our first order of business, which is to approve the meeting summary from December 2024. Hopefully everyone's taken a look at that. May I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Was that Dave? I need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or revisions? Hearing none, the meeting summary is approved. We will move on to committee reports. First, we have the MWAC Technical Advisory Committee. Joe Jakuda is the TAC chair. Joseph?
Thank you, Councilmember Denoga. Second. So at our February 11th TAC meeting, we discussed, primarily we discussed our work with the 2015 ozone NAAQS, our path forward with a redesignation request and a maintenance plan. We discussed in detail EPA's response to the various questions we sent them related to the redesignation request and maintenance plan the region is currently working on. Discussions focused on developing new inventories for non-road and on-road sources using latest MWAQC 5 model and updating emissions inventories for point, non-point, and marine air and rail sources based on EPA's nationally collected 2022 inventory. That will be the starting point for developing the inventories. We also discussed an updated schedule for development of the redesignation request and maintenance plan. The other topic of note was that we did discuss EPA's final guidance on contingency measures in non-attainment areas. I'd say this was more of a review since it won't be directly applicable if we're in maintenance, but it has been a change in policy that we do want to make sure the technical staff was abreast of, because if we are ever in non-attainment, it will impact us greatly. And this document will assist the area agencies in preparing contingency measures in regards to ozone and PM if we do have to develop non-attainment area SIPs. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. Next, we have ACPAC, the Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee. William Washburn.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Denoga. I'm William Washburn, and I am the 2025 chair for ACPAC. I was voted into this position at the ACPAC meeting that was held on January 27th. And along with me, William Marsh was voted into the position of vice chair for ACPAC. I was appointed to the committee originally to represent the NWAQC DC branch, and I am also chair of its Environmental and Climate Justice Committee. Let me just to continue. we we held our new roster for 2025 was approved by MWAC at its February 12th meeting, its executive committee meeting, that is. We had no new members added to the roster as the 3 committee members wanted to stay on the committee for another term. So the ACPAC membership roster remains the same. Our next committee meeting is on March the 17th, and that will be a special meeting. We're inviting general members of the public or community for the first listening session for input on the Environmental Justice Toolkit. This is an update or refresh of the toolkit that ACPAC published in 2017. The focus is on outreach and community strategies to address climate, energy, and air-related environmental quality issues. If you have any questions regarding the actions taken or at this meeting or any other matters that were before us, please contact Leah Boggs. And with that, I conclude my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate it. Now we'll move on to Clean Air Partners. We have Jen Destimone.
Thank you so much. Clean Air Partners is in the process of planning this year's summer campaign. The campaign will be kicked off during Air Quality Awareness Week, which is the first week of May, with an announcement of a gas-powered lawn equipment exchange. And this will be the second year that Clean Air Partners is doing this type of event. The exchange will take place the weekends of May 24th and 25th, which is actually Memorial Day weekend, and also June 7th and 8th. And during those weekends, residents will be able to bring in gas-powered equipment into participating Ace Hardware stores in exchange for new electric equipment. And the available equipment that will be that residents will be able to exchange will be lawnmowers, weed trimmers, and also leaf blowers. And all of the gas-powered equipment will then be taken to a recycling partner to be properly disposed of. The exchange will also be accompanied by a number of different backyard bubble events, and that includes an exhibit to educate the public about different ways that they can reduce their emissions that are specifically related to lawn and gardening. Event locations are in the process of being confirmed, but there will be events in DC, there will be events in Virginia, and also in Maryland. And then lastly, during the month of August, that will be designated as Ozone Action Month. And then during that month, Clean Air Partners will be going around the Baltimore, Washington region with an eco-driving exhibit. And the focus of that exhibit and that month will be to educate residents on how they can reduce vehicle emissions. So we'll have more details on the events during Ozone Action Month at a later time once those plans start taking place. And that concludes my report.
Great, thanks, Jen. Next, we have the Climate, Energy, and Environment Policy Committee. Jeff King will be taking that.
Thanks, Chair Dernoga. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, the CEPC Climate, Energy, and Environment Policy Committee met back on January 22nd. They had a discussion about the outlook for 2025, going through various interest areas for the committee. The next 2 items were related to the ACPAC memo that was sent to CEPC last year. The first one was related to establishing climate goals, and the idea was that we would first take a look at how we're doing in meeting our current goals before we had any conversation about what new goals might look like. And so Maya Davis from COG staff briefed the committee on the technical approach for completing this mid-course review. So that is now underway. The other issue that came up in the ACPAC letter that was addressed by CEPC in January was the issue of the ramping up or doing more on climate outreach and education. So we started that whole process by having our consultants do a survey of the existing climate outreach and education initiatives across the region. So we heard from PRR and ICF on that. Then we turned our attention to engagement related to climate and climate planning and the comprehensive climate action plan for the region that's under development this year that will be wrapped up later this year. And we talked a bit about what sectors and what kind of engagement we would see this year. We concluded with a variety of committee and member updates. And that's all I have to report. Chair Dernoga, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Finally, we had the federal updates. Go back to Jen.
Yes, thanks so much. So COG staff is tracking many federal actions that could impact air quality funding and policies and regulations. At this time, the federal administration has not announced anything specifically related to air quality. Everything right now has been pretty much directly related to the climate program. But as you all are aware, things are moving pretty quickly, changing on a daily basis. So staff will be continuing to monitor this, and we will be providing updates at future meetings.
Okay, looking forward to that, I think. Moving on, next on the agenda, we have item 3. This is the local and state updates. This is the opportunity for both local and state members to share information on their jurisdiction's activities. So first, let's hear from our local jurisdictions. Do any Maryland members have updates they'd like to share with the committee? Not hearing any. How about Virginia? Any Virginia municipalities or counties? All right, let's move on to the state.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Yeah, this is Julius J.D. Spain from Arlington, day 58 on the job. Nothing significant to report at this time coming out of Arlington. We, as so many other municipalities, are watching closely the effects of what has happened federally and how that's going to impact us here in Arlington. We are, preparing to go right into our budget for FY26. We announced that last night. So nothing, again, significant to report at this time. And it's just it's great to be in this space. Thank you.
Great to have you. Any other local jurisdictions have something to report? Okay, let's move on to the state air agencies and see what they have. First, we'll go to District of Columbia.
So 2 topics I wanted to bring up today. First, we've been making great strides with implementation of our odor control regulations. We're pretty much wrapping up the last of our initial submissions of odor control plans, issuing either approvals or denials. So that's been a great step forward for this program. The other thing is we are doing stakeholder sessions for folks, particularly in the district, but everyone's welcome to look at the data we collected during our second year of working with the hyperlocal mobile monitoring data collection with ACLIMA. We had collected data through about 30 square miles of the district, so a little shy of half, and we're having our community engagement sessions with residents in wards 6, 7, and 8 tonight. We had 1 through 5 last week. And that's it. And I can also drop in the evite later to the to sign up for the stakeholder engagement, and our data map is, I already dropped that in the chat if anyone was interested in looking.
Great, thanks, Joseph. Maryland?
Hello, this is Roger Thinnell. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. We're very busy with bills that are going through session right now. They're mostly climate related, seeing impacts, etc., costs. We do have our comment period is now over for our 5-year update for our regional haze 5-year plan. And I'm just getting back from a long vacation, so that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Virginia? Anyone from the Virginia area you see with us? Well, hearing nothing, I guess we'll move on. So next we have item number 4. This is the first briefing for today's meeting. This is Clean Air Partners. It's a private-public partnership that seeks to improve the health and quality of residents in the Baltimore-Washington region. And Clean Air Partners does this by encouraging individuals and organizations to take voluntary actions to reduce air pollution and the impacts of climate change through a variety of campaigns and initiatives. So every 3 years, Clean Air Partners commissions a regional survey to measure awareness and attitudes about air quality, to identify the potential for future behavior change, and to serve as an evaluation of their ongoing public outreach campaigns. Now, today we will hear the results from this survey by Jen DeSimone, Clean Air Partners Managing Director, and Steve Robb, President and Founder of OpinionWorks, and that's an independent research organization based in Annapolis that supports Clean Air Partners in this effort. So we'll turn to Steve and Jen. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Chair Janoga. While Steve is bringing up the presentation, I just wanted to take a very brief minute at the beginning here just to provide some background information, and then I'll turn it over to Steve because he actually has all the results that he's going to present to you all. So as Chair Janoga has mentioned, the Clean Air Partners public awareness surveys are conducted every 3 years, and they're done with residents across the Baltimore-Washington region. And the purpose of them is to gauge residents' attitudes about air pollution and their willingness to change their behavior to help reduce air pollution. The previous surveys were completed in 2015, 2018, and 2021. And the results of the surveys are used for a few different things. One is to evaluate the effectiveness of Clean Air Partners' public outreach and the campaigns that they do. And all of the campaigns are geared to encourage behavior change and get residents to change their behaviors to improve air quality. The results are also used to gain insight into the extent of what current actions people are already doing, and then also what future actions that they are willing to do to help improve the air. And then the data from the surveys are also used to help develop any future program messaging and also any education and marketing initiatives. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve Robbie from OpinionWorks. Steve and his team have been working with the Clean Air Partners Board of Directors since 2018, and they have extensive experience developing and conducting research to support various behavior change campaigns that focus on environmental issues and also public health. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, are you able to hear me okay? Is the sound all right? I will assume so.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, good. Thanks. Okay. So yes, we have some interesting findings to share with you. And while I'm speaking, I would encourage people, if you have questions, to use the chat. I think Jen would be able to monitor that. And Jen, just interrupt if there's anything we should discuss. And we can certainly talk at the end of the presentation about some of these findings. I just want to briefly credential our firm. As Jen said, we're based in Annapolis. We work for some of the organizations that you see on the screen, including the Baltimore Sun newspaper going back to 2007. So we do polling for elections and issues for them, but we work for a number of public agencies, federal, state, local, throughout this region, which is our home, and across the country. And most of our work is focused on behavior change. It's focused on healthy behaviors and also environmentally friendly behaviors, as you might be able to gather from this list. And so I'm delighted to be able to help Clean Air Partners with this work. So the survey that we conducted for Clean Air Partners in this region included a very large sample size. So those of you that are quantitative people, 2,434 interviews across the region. So that gives us a very good ability to do deep segmentation of these responses by jurisdiction for the larger jurisdictions, for regions certainly, and by a variety of demographic, socioeconomic, and behavioral subgroups. So we've got a lot of power in the data set. We are very concerned about making sure that the sample is reflective of the population. And one of the concerns we have is to make sure that we offer enough methods of response. So in the old days, which is 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, we used to call people. People don't answer their phones anymore, so we use other methods. So we survey online, we mail out a packet that people can mail back to us, and we also do call people, both wireless and landline. So it's a mixed mode sampling method, English and Spanish language, so that we're trying to do the best job that we possibly can, reaching a broad share of the public, October 9th through November 11th. So the intent here, and it's consistent with past years, is to survey at the end of the summer season as the weather's beginning to change. But people have memories, of the summer season and any air quality challenges that may have arisen. So we want to make sure to measure consistently year to year. And we have that good ability with this methodology to look back to the prior surveys. I do want to remind everybody as we get into the results here in a second, that this is perception, it's not reality. I mean, these are the public's perceptions and attitudes about air quality, which is very important, of course, to our work, but it is not necessarily tracking with scientific data always. The sample is composed as follows. This is the aggregate sample across the whole region, just to give you a little sense that we have a very good cross-section. And we take care to look at the census, the American Community Survey that the Census Bureau conducts, and match our demographics to what they say are in the region. Now, the extra step here that gives us some color commentary is that we also do in-depth interviews. We selected 15 participants that represent a cross-section of response, a cross-section of attitudes, of demography, of where they live in the region, so that we can ask them a few questions. And as Jen said, one of our big objectives here is to inform public outreach and behavior change. And so when we do that, it's very important to understand what people are thinking sort of inside, the inside voice. And this qualitative method of inviting people into a one-on-one interview that's very friendly is the way to kind of get inside or get beneath people's inhibitions or their hesitations to talk about what they really think. So we want to understand what the barriers are in front of good behavior, behavior that we think would be helpful from an air quality standpoint, and how to remove those barriers, either through incentives or nudges or motivations or whatever it may be. So let's get into the findings. Let's talk first about the public's impressions of air quality. So we ask them to rate air quality as they see it on a 1 to 5 scale. And you'll see the question wording at the bottom of each of these slides. So 1 is not a problem at all. 5 is a very big problem. So, we had a little dip post-pandemic or in the tail end of the pandemic. In other words, people perceiving better air quality. Things have reverted to the 2018 levels in terms of people's perceptions of air quality. One little footnote is that the problem rating is gradually improving. And I'll show you that in a couple of different ways. So here's one, the perception of the trend. So we always want to think about whether people perceive a trend and what that trend says. So we still have a 2-to-1 worsening trend. If people see a trend in air quality, 42% today see the air quality in this region is getting worse. Only 19% see it as getting better. So it's a 2-to-1 negative trend. There's a couple of small silver linings that we might want to note, though. The better number, the better number in terms of a trend line is improving slowly. There are more and more people that are beginning to see a little bit of a positive trend. So that's something to take from this. But overall, we have to know that the prevailing thought is that air quality is not so good and getting worse. Does it affect the quality of life of my own family? 68% say yes today, and that's at a relatively high level compared to past years, certainly the most recent past survey in 2021. So let's talk for just a moment about equity and kind of whether people perceive that air quality problems are distributed evenly across the region or whether there's some pockets of greater concern and pain. First of all, we asked people if they believe that air pollution impacts some groups of people more than others. So the agree is in green and the disagree is in the orange and red. So strongly agree. So, we have a total of over 70% who perceive that air quality is not equally distributed across the region. Some groups of people are affected more than others. We asked people what those factors might be, and this was a closed-ended list that was offered to them. We asked them to say if it has a strong impact, some impact, or no impact on differences in air quality. They're ranked in order of how much people perceive them to be a problem. 67% today, very similar to the prior survey in 2021, consider proximity to pollution sources to be a key issue. Whether a community has trees, parks, and green spaces is the second, not asked in 2021. This is a new proposition that we added to the list. Access to transit and bike lanes, access to resources the community might need to make lifestyle changes. And then at the bottom of the list are income and the racial and ethnic makeup of the community. So one of the takeaways from this list is that people do perceive inequities and they relate them very much to cause and effect and capacity, let's say, or infrastructure of the community. People across the region are less likely to relate them specifically to income level or racial and ethnic makeup on their own, but do perceive there to be a correlation between those things. I'm just saying that as a messaging point, those of you that are engaged with communicating with the public, it's more intuitive for people to think about these causal type relationships. Now let's look at the AQI. Very consistent with past years. So about half, just under half the public can recall seeing or hearing air quality color codes. And this is what they recall. 2024 is over here to the right. Rather similar to 2018. The orange and red bars have returned to about where they were. They were higher in 2015. They improved, or the recall was a little bit less, I guess we should say, in 2018. And in 2024, we're at similar levels. So you can see the different colors that people can recall seeing. Let's talk about climate change for a moment. How much of a problem is climate change in people's minds? So this is the same scale that was used at the beginning of the survey to assess air quality problem. Here's the climate change problem. So over half now of the public across this metropolitan region give it a 5 on a 5-point scale. Another 22% give it a 4. So you can see a gradually increasing trend line of concern across this region about climate change. Do humans have a role? So the Washington-Baltimore region is a place where people accept that humans have a role in creating climate change. Essentially 85% of the public across this region is willing to say humans have a role in this. They may combine it with natural causes, but humans are involved here. So I will just tell you, regardless, I'm not going to be political at all or talk about this in that sense. I'm just thinking about, from a behavior change standpoint, having people accept and embrace the idea that humans are part of this as a causal thing helps to engage people. It helps to get people on board with some of the actions that we hope that they'll take. So let's talk about some of those actions. Air-friendly behaviors. First of all, personal agency is a very important foundation for this whole effort. So if we want people to help, if we want people to do things in their daily life, do they feel like those things will make a difference? So today, 58% agree with the statement, I can make a difference in improving air quality. So that's pretty good. I mean, we've got almost 6 out of 10, but going back in years, we do see a steady decline in this sense of personal agency. There might be multiple reasons for that. Here's one. This is a respondent named Lyra from one of the in-depth interviews. She said, I can try to make my little environment better, but there is nothing I can do about air pollution water pollution, the lack of any resources we need, global warming, climate change. There's nothing I can do. I can talk about it all day long. I can be very passionate about it. But the people who make the laws or have the money to give to the people who make the laws, they need to do the things. So this is a theme we're seeing in a lot of our work. I'm not saying it's across the board, but there are many people who are animated by this idea that, look, it's big corporations, it's big institutions, it's the government, so some of these big players need to do some things, need to get on board. Of course, all of you are at the table and the public sector is very engaged here. So there is a need to communicate about that, to help get people on board. But, when they don't see that or when they don't perceive that, that hurts. It undermines the effort to engage people. So let's look at 12 specific actions. Here they are. I'm not going to read them all to you, of course, but you can take a look at the slide and see the different actions that we tested. There's a variety of things that Clean Air Partners is interested in potentially promoting, getting people to do, that would have various kinds of help. And one of the big takeaways from this slide is that the level of willingness to take any one of these actions is very good. Out of all 12 of these actions, including solar panels, which is a big investment, 71% or more are willing to do them. So that's good. Then we asked if people have done them. And so we can see that, of course, the numbers are quite different. They're lower for the most part. And so 86% ranging down to 25. I'll point out, by the way, that solar panels now includes the idea of buying from a community solar farm. And so that's not as intense as putting solar panels on your home. But still only 25% said that they have done that. These are self-reported numbers. So know that people sometimes misremember or overrepresent. These are not necessarily scientifically accurate in that sense, but they do give a little reading about whether the public feels like they have or is engaged or wants to be engaged with these things. One of the things we like to do with this is look at the gap. So you're going to see some arrows appear here where we have the biggest opportunity, because if we look at the gap between the people that say they're willing to do a behavior and have done the behavior, so that's the lighter blue versus the dark blue, the bigger that gap is, for example, planting trees. Lots of willingness, less actual performance of the tree planting behavior, but there's a gap here that we can fill. And so one of the things that we do is look at where those gaps are largest. And that gives us an idea of some of the activities that we may want to invest in and engage in, to help move things forward. So here's a couple clues from the in-depth interviews of what's going to help get people on board with some of these behaviors. So here's Remy, who says, I guess if you're seeing people take action and you're seeing the reason why they're doing it, and you start to follow along in those steps, it causes a domino reaction. The more people that you see doing it, the more you're likely to follow along, especially if you see the reasons why. So Remy's giving us two things here. And one is the reason why, which is the same as Christina's comment down below about refueling after dusk. It's a very common refrain that people, when we ask them about refueling after dusk, they say, well, that seems easy. I could do that, but why? Why are they asking me? So the why is very important, and we need to be sure to express the why. How is it going to help if people take the action of refueling after dusk? And they need to know that. But the other point that Remy's making that is very important in behavioral science is this idea of social norming or social diffusion, you might even say, where basically if you see friends and neighbors doing things, you become encouraged and you want to follow along. You want to get on board with that. And so there's always a sense that we want to create a bit of momentum around behaviors that we hope the public will adopt so that people get excited, or they at least they look around and they say, wow, everybody's doing this. I should do it too. And so you can think of normative things like recycling that over the years have become very normative. And people are basically expected by their neighbors and themselves to take an action like that. So we strive for that. We want people to feel that these actions we're advocating are norms and that everybody's doing them. Then two more quick insights from the in-depth interviews. Solar panels, I couldn't do here because this is an apartment complex, but a community solar farm, I would definitely look into it and get more information. And Shelton makes a similar point, the second person. And we learned that about community solar, it's just not penetrated the public's awareness very much yet. And in these in-depth interviews, when people heard about it, they were excited. So seems easy to them. It's something they could sign up for and do without a lot of effort. And so it has a lot of potential for growth if we pursue it more. Let's talk a bit about some attitudes. Top reasons to improve air quality. So we tested a number of different ideas, as you can see up and down the list. Health, asthma and breathing problems, and so on. And these are ranked in descending order in terms of the motivating impact for the public. So it comes down to health, climate change, and saving money. Maybe not a surprise, but it's very clear. You know, the health is number one. That's the thing that people are most focused on. And there is a perception out there that breathing problems are increasing in terms of their incidence level in the public. And so we want to be attentive to that. And that, again, though not a good thing, is an opportunity. It opens up a potential for dialogue with the public if that perception exists. Climate change is very motivating to people in this region. And so that's number 3 on this list. And of course, saving money is motivating. There's other things here. I want the Baltimore-Washington region to have better air quality. 48% say that motivates me a lot. And, you know, I'm not somebody that believes that people are actually regionally concerned. We're usually, as people, more concerned about home and hearth and kind of our families and our neighborhoods, you know, and so extending ourselves out to the whole region can be difficult for people. But what we learned in the in-depth interviews around that is that there's a sense that if the region is rising, that I'm probably rising. If air quality is getting better, it's probably getting better for me. And so there is a sense that we want to live in a place, a region where things are good, where air quality is positive, and that's why that one scores so well. So we're not going to get people by appealing to them to improve the region. But if the region is improving, they'll feel like their air quality is improving too. And it will get them more in a more positive frame to get on board with these actions. One more take on that list, which is that we ask people to choose just the one most motivating statement for them. And when they do that, out of that list of statements, they choose just the one that's most motivating. 25% choose climate change. Health remains number 2 at 16%, and the regional rises to number 3. Here's asthma at number 4. So they are the same, but the pecking order shifts around a little bit. So you can see the very potent impact of climate change and how people want to link it and understand how to do something about it, because it's a big problem. A little more insight. Related to climate change is about the next generation. It's about my kids' kids, etc. And you can see what Quentin says, but he ends with this thought. And if we don't do something, and I don't know what that something is going to be, and he trails off. So that's the opportunity for us to help Quentin know what some of the things are that he can do. And people need that. They want to be part of the solution. And so we can help with that. Asthma, a big factor for Denise, because of her family situation, and same with Todd. I mean, this was specifically related to switching from charcoal to a different kind of grilling that wouldn't have emissions. And so he hadn't thought about that before. And then he linked it in the interview to the health concerns in his family, and he was immediately converted. People often ask me, what's more important to do? Do we need to share the urgency and the bad news with the public, or do we want to give them good news about progress? And while we have to do both, and scientifically we want to be honest and tell them when things are bad, when things are good, in terms of public engagement, if that's our goal, look, people already know the air quality is suffering, and they can breathe that and feel that themselves. And they talk about it in colorful terms in these in-depth interviews. So there is not a great need to continue to talk to the public about the urgency of the problem, though we need to do that, again, scientifically. But if we're trying to engage and mobilize and motivate people, people need to know that something is going well, and they need to aspire. And so the positive news, the good news stories, the things that are improving are things that we need to stress. And, I have had other opportunities to very specifically and in depth test the impact of good news versus bad news on environmental motivation. And the good news motivation causes people to want to go even faster and harder towards the goal. And so that's a consistent finding, and this tracks with that. Trusted sources of information. One of the things that sometimes surprises public sector people when they look at a list like this is how high our public agencies do rate. And, the EPA is not necessarily a cuddly and touchy-feely agency in the eyes of the public, right? But it's highly respected. And this is a very typical result. And the same goes for our state regulatory agencies. We've got the Department of Health, which is not defined in terms of level of government, but these are very highly regarded in terms of trusted sources of information about air quality. So those of you that are representing public agencies, your voice is very important in this discussion. When you speak, when your agency speaks, the public really does pay attention to that, and this is evidence of that. There are others on this list that also are influential, and so we want to be cognizant. For example, meteorologists who people follow, or apps, that people pay attention to. And these little arrows indicate whether in recent years there's an uptick or maybe a little downtick. And the meteorologist number has been declining somewhat, still important, pretty high on the list, but declined a little bit from past years. By the way, Clean Air Partners is climbing significantly in terms of a trusted source of information. So to sum it up, there's a lot that I've just shared with you. I want to kind of give you a little summative thinking about what we've seen. Air quality has widespread impact. 2/3 of the people feel that they're personally impacted in terms of quality of life. So there's a widespread impact to this work. People see causation. And by the way, I didn't make this point during the main presentation, but when you ask people why it's getting worse, the big thing that they point to is transportation. That there's not just trucks, but more people, cars on the road, that there's more congestion as they see it, and that this is leading to the air quality issues that we have. And that's a very consistent observation on the part of people in the in-depth interviews as causation. People do worry about their family, certainly health issues, and they think a lot about their neighbors and about inequities in the broader region. So we have an empathetic public in this sense. And again, I think our messaging and the way we talk about this can flow from that to an extent. People are concerned about inequities in this region, and they are concerned about what's happening with their neighbors, and certainly concerned about their own family. Climate change and health, as I've said, are very highly motivated. So we keep that in mind as we speak with the public. Whenever we can make links to these two things, the public's going to pay more attention and understand the importance of what we're talking about. There are those clear gaps between willingness and actual action on some behaviors. So that's a guidepost in terms of what behaviors we may want to work on. We need to explain reasons why. The action needs to be accessible. The $5 action, not the $5,000 action, we should be asking people to take as much as possible so that it's easy for people to get on board. We need to show momentum. There's other people doing it. Your neighbors are doing it. And a sense of shared commitment, which includes, by the way, the public sector agencies stating this is important. This is something we all should do together. And that sense of importance coming from the public sector is something people do talk about in interviews. They want to hear that. They want to know that the government thinks this is something we should all be doing and is putting some resources behind it. So they're looking for cues from those of you that are in the public sector on this. So that's what I have. And Jen, I will turn it back to you potentially. And if there's anything to discuss, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And I will turn it over to Chair Janoga.
Okay. Jen, there was no questions in the chat.
Let's see. We have actually a question from Tom Blue. Tom, are you on? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask, or if not, I can do it.
Well, they aren't really questions. They're just observations based on what the results of this survey are. And, the whole thing about more vehicles, I would say that more vehicles doesn't necessarily mean or equate to worse air quality or more pollution. Because vehicles are continually getting cleaner over the years as you have fleet turnover. The other thing is that, and I'm channeling my inner Mr. Snyder, in that we've been trying for years and years and years to get the word out about how much air quality has improved in the area, and that is still the case. It may have slowed down in terms of improvement, but it still is far better than it's been even 10 years ago.
Yeah, I just want to say on behalf of the public, that's unfortunately a lagging indicator. It's just like the Chesapeake Bay, which we do a lot of work on. It took years for the Bay program to be able to penetrate the public consciousness with the idea that the Bay is improving, and that trend line number there is starting to change. It just takes a long time, and so we need to continue to have sustained communication around that, and any success stories we can tell that are personal would help with that basic storyline that things are improving.
I see a
Okay, well,
question.
thanks.
Oh, Chair,
Yes,
I see a question from John Morrill from Fairfax County. And John had a question, were there any particular call outs to smoke and hazardous air from last summer's Canadian wildfires?
Yes, there were. Yeah, we did hear about that. And it's been a year, but people still had that in mind, for sure. And so people did talk about the wildfire smoke. And of course, that ties to their underlying concerns about climate change. And so that connection is made. And there was certainly some talk about that.
Mr. Chair, hi, Dave Snyder. Did you get a sense about the geographic differences in geographic opinions, outer jurisdictions versus inner, differences in age, demographics, things like that? Do you have any observations for us on that?
Yes, there's plenty that one could say about that. In a broad brush, there is a very big difference between people that live in the inner parts of our metropolitan area, whether that be Baltimore City or let's say DC plus its inner suburbs, versus people that live further out. And so in terms of perceptions of air quality, in terms of feelings of impact and those sorts of things, they do vary greatly by geography. In terms of how people describe the air, if we ask them to use adjectives to describe the air, for example, it's very different if you're out in Harford County compared to being in inner Baltimore County or something like that. So for sure, that's a big factor. We do find that African American and Hispanic respondents in this study are somewhat more prone, particularly on the issues of asthma and breathing problems, to talk about impact, to feel impact. But it's not just confined there. That question where 2/3 of the public said, I'm personally impacting quality of life. While there was a bump up in those two groups I just mentioned, it's fairly across the board demographically. There are some differences in socioeconomic terms and things that you might expect or intuit. And there is some relationship with age where older people are a little bit more likely to perceive some concern and problem with this than younger. And I say significantly younger, let's say under age 35. So there are some relationships, and all of that is in our report, which we can certainly share. But the geographic one, I think, is the biggest.
Anything else, Dave? Anyone else? I see a question just came in from Heidi Bonfin. Any sense why trust in local meteorologists went away from me? You see that, Steve?
I see her question. Yeah. Hi, Heidi. Yeah, I mean, one of the things we see in parallel to this is that the watching of local TV news has declined. There was a time when we all watched Channel 4 and 7 and 9 and 5, and so that's declined, and that's a little more confined to older residents today. And so that's part of it, that the television meteorologists are a little less omnipresent with the public. But as we all know, Capital Weather Gang and others, they are visible on other platforms. And so it's not just about television. But I think that is one of the big factors that we would suggest might be driving some of that decline. But keep in mind, there's still over 40% that indicated trust. And I still think the meteorologists are a key partner, a key advocate for these issues, of course, and need to be cultivated. But there's just some change going on there.
Thanks.
Mr.
And then
Chair, I had one more question.
So
So,
Heidi still had one.
okay, great. Great, Heidi. Sorry.
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, my second question was, would it be important in messaging to try to quantify the impacts of their personal actions, such as by switching from a gas-powered lawnmower to an electric, what reduction they could have on air quality pollution or on impacts on greenhouse gas reduction, so that they see their own personal action does have a positive impact?
Yes, for sure. But what's important about that is to make the action as unitary, in other words, a personal and individual, whatever the factoid is or the impact that you're describing to the public needs to be something that ties very directly to their personal action and isn't some macro societal type number. So, we're right now working, for example, in the marine debris area on the issue of disposable plastic water bottles versus refillable ones. And one of the things we've learned there in our focus groups is that people just say, "Oh, that's easy. I could give up on a plastic water bottle at least once in a while and use a refillable one," and they can link that in their minds to the reduction in plastic pollution in the ocean. It's remarkable how people make that connection. So that's kind of the way it works. Anytime we want people to take an action and we want to tie their action to some sort of impact, it has to be believable and very small scale. They'd much rather know what their individual, whatever it is going to do as opposed to the big societal number, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Dave?
Sure. One final question. Did you get a sense about how air quality stacks up about in comparison to other concerns that people have? In other words, if you start asking about air quality, immediately people will go to air quality as a major concern. If you started with traffic congestion, then they'd immediately start thinking about traffic congestion. But were you able to sort of compare air quality with other concerns that people have?
We did not on this particular survey compare air quality to things like inflation or you name it, a whole basket full of concerns. However, we've done that in other contexts, and usually water quality or water pollution ranks just a little bit higher than air on people's personal pecking lists. But those two things are fairly closely related in terms of level of concern and are very high. In a survey in Virginia last year, when we were looking at environmental concerns and did measure them against things like inflation and crime and other such things, that a couple of the top line environmental concerns that people had were almost as high as cost of living. And so we do have, I know that sometimes our elected people don't believe it, but the public has a tremendous amount of concern about clean air and clean water. And so we can validate that many times quantitatively. We just didn't do that specific exercise here. But yes, it's very high. And so talking with people about air quality will get their attention and link to a very high order level of concern that they may have, as you saw, with their health and with climate change. So you should not hesitate to lead with air quality and just make sure to make those linkages back to health and climate change where you can, so that it's relevant. But yes, it's a leading concern.
Anyone else? Going once, twice. Okay, well, thanks, Steve and Jen, for this very informative presentation. I guess we ready to move on? Well, thanks, Steve.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 5, which is an update on MWAC's environmental justice work. And I think most of you are aware MWAC is in the process of developing an environmental justice action plan for the use of our member organizations. And the EJ subcommittee, with the assistance of AECOM, is leading this initiative. So Dave Snyder, EJ subcommittee co-chair, will provide an update on this important work, and then we'll have staff speak to the action plan and next steps. So Dave, you got the floor.
Sure, thanks a lot. Could staff show the slides?
Can everyone see that?
Great. Robert, Christopher, is there anything you want to say about the title here?
Sure. I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to provide an update on the activities of the Environmental Justice Subcommittee. Like the chair said, we're just going to talk about what we've done so far and where we are in the process. I'm just going to give a brief intro here, then Co-Chair Snyder will talk about the work so far, and then our contractor from AECOM, Tahira, will walk through the draft action plan.
Sure, thanks a lot. Next slide. So this work has actually been in many ways groundbreaking. We have done some things in terms of community outreach, in terms of organizing our meetings to allow public comment both at the beginning and at the end. And the objective here is to try to gauge the degree to which we can act in areas where environmental justice is a key consideration. But I want to make a larger point here, which is recall that we started this work in a very different national political context than where we are today. And so I know one of the points that I think we're going to be developing is that this ought to be a matter of everyone's interest. Of course, we're focused on environmental justice communities, but the fact of the matter is that air pollution there spreads around the region. And so I think one of the key points that we want to be making going forward is that this is important in and of itself from the standpoint of equity and environmental justice, but it's also important to the segments of the population that are not in environmental justice communities because we all share air quality. So the EJ subcommittee was created after a series of comments were made from the public about a desire to work in this area. And we'll be seeking input, of course, from this group, where we hope to have the final report to this group for action in its May meeting. And that's very important because that's our current target for the finalization of the subcommittee's work to be handed then up to the committee. And that's why it's really important for committee members to be tracking this progress so that when it arrives at the MWAC level, you'll have some pretty good background and some pretty good knowledge about the work that we're doing. Now, we are working on an action plan, but we recognize that the action plan is voluntary and depends on legal authority, resources, and other factors. Next slide. So what have we done to date? Well, this is one of the more intensive projects that I've ever served on for the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. We've literally been meeting every month. We have very, very good contract support. And the work has really been, from my standpoint, and I think generally recognized as really groundbreaking in many ways. And we're working now on a complete list of priority strategies and actions and trying to analyze those and actually make initial suggestions as to which agencies ought to be tasked with moving forward, again, within the context of voluntariness, that is, resources available, legal authority, et cetera. But we also don't want to be bound by existing resources and existing legal authority. And where there are additional needs, I think we want to try to make that point about additional resources. For example, more testing in more smaller areas to get a better sense about where are the pollution hotspots, and what can we do about those hotspots, in as well as addressing, of course, the regional context. So this slide provides some examples of the tools that we're using, the extensive public engagement. We can chat about that a little bit later. Mentioned air monitoring, emission sources, air pollutants, community health risks, and then the action plan, control measures, and permits are all factors being considered in the work. Next item, next slide. So again, based heavily on public input, general public input that we've received through the normal channels, specific community-based input that we've really reached out with a series of community meetings. And the basic kind of elements of the plan will be, a level set on air quality in the region. What are we talking about when we're talking about equity and environmental justice? What are the priorities, strategies, and what agencies are best capable of moving forward on those? And then, as I said, the recommended actions and the call to action. So with that, I'll turn it over to AECOM. And again, thank you for really impressive work that you've been doing on this project.
Great. Thank you, Dave. And is my sound coming through okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So Dave gave a great overview of kind of how we compiled this draft action plan. This is the draft. The intent is that we will go through several rounds of stakeholder review to solicit feedback from the EJ subcommittee, from MWAC, and then from the public as well. We have are in the process of scheduling a slew of listening sessions to obtain feedback on this plan. So it's not finalized. There's a lot of opportunity to provide feedback on this plan. The first chapter, the second chapter, I should say, that kind of gets into the background on air quality. So we cover air quality in the region. So Air Quality 101, our aim was to keep the language simple and cover what basic information that anyone who picks this up who is not in this world should know to understand the context of air quality and how it impacts human health, how it's measured, what are the key pollutants, what are typical sources, how is it regulated, how is it controlled, and then what does it look like in the region? And where are those hotspots and all of that. So hopefully that gives enough background. One of the things that we're looking for opportunities and for feedback in this section is it clear enough? Is it simple enough? Are there any specific types of visual aids that would be helpful to kind of capture some of these ideas? That would be great to hear as we move forward with the feedback, questions, answers, and the listening sessions as well. Can I get the next slide? The third chapter covers the conversation around equity and environmental justice. So this is defining what we mean by equity and environmental justice, especially in the context of air quality and improving air quality. So it highlights the disproportionate impacts of air pollution, especially specifically in the Metropolitan Washington region. It talks about the health impacts, and high level, how can a person who is developing policies or programs, or a team that's doing that, then can consider these concepts of equity and environmental justice when they're developing those policies and programs. All right, and the next slide. All right, chapter 4 covers high level strategies to improve air quality. So we had a bunch of initial listening sessions in different regions throughout the Metropolitan Washington area. And we gathered a lot of recommendations from a lot of different types of group and a lot of different types of people that are directly impacted by this issue. We captured all of those recommendations and actions in a almost like a database, a spreadsheet essentially. And we pulled out several types of trends, or buckets, I should say, the strategies that kind of capture the majority of the recommendations that came through. Improving, in general, considering equity and improving air quality means improving the monitoring, fostering stronger partnerships, improving air quality regulation, increasing public outreach and education, reducing emissions from stationary sources, reducing vehicle emissions, and then promoting land use planning in support of air quality improvement. And then, so this chapter goes into what those high-level buckets mean, the short-term and long-term impacts of each of those, the equity considerations in those high-level strategies. And then chapter 5, which is our next slide, goes into the recommended actions. And again, I don't think we stress it enough. These are voluntary, they're not mandatory. But the way that this chapter of recommended actions is broken down is it lists the high priority actions first. And in previous meetings, we talked about how we went through a longer list of actions to ones that were prioritized for various reasons that we do capture in this document, that are high priority actions, which basically means ones that stakeholders should start with first, and then the medium and then low priority actions. And for higher priority recommended actions, we went into more detail about some of the considerations, a more detailed description, who are the primary action owners, the status, high-level status of where that action stands, some of the primary challenges of that we heard from feedback from stakeholders about what it would take to actually implement it, and then some of the near-term implementation steps. And on the screen here are the strategies. If you want to go to the next slide, the actions. Yep, so the previous slide showed the high priority actions. Those are just the titles. There's a lot more detail in this chapter. And then this slide shows the medium and low priority actions that were listed for context. All right, and we'll take it to the next slide. All right, and then we wrap this up by a conversation around a call to action, which speaks to MWAC members in DC, Maryland, Virginia, the state air agencies, the state transportation agencies, planning board, with specific things to consider and the importance of their involvement in considering equity and environmental justice and air quality planning. And we include a couple appendices. We included the list of stakeholder groups that were engaged. We reached out to them and included. And then the simplified list of complete actions. So again, some of the feedback I think that we'll be looking for over the next few weeks and month are are there any concepts that can be simplified, either written verbally or visually? Is there any more detail that would be helpful? And things like that. So totally open to that. And I guess we can open up to questions and feedback from everyone on the call.
Before we do that, I just want to go over next steps and then we can get to questions if that's all right.
Sorry, I missed that slide.
No, that's okay. So like I said, next steps we've talked about, we're going to present the plan to the public in a second round of listening sessions. The first round, there were 3, one in Maryland, one Virginia, and one DC. We'll be going back to those same groups, asking them if the material, the content of the draft action plan reflects what they were looking for from the first round. We're presenting it to you, and we're going to have an open comment period for the public. And then, as Co-Chair Snyder said earlier, we're hoping to have the final back to MWAC in May. So now we can have opportunity for questions.
Questions, folks? Dave, you must have done a very good job.
No, I know better than that. And just to reemphasize one key point, which is members of MWAC, please, in addition to today's briefing, please take a look at the draft, and I know staff will help get that to you. We really want comments from as broad a audience as we can possibly get them, because we are really moving toward a final a final report, which will go from the subcommittee to MWAC. And we appreciate a lot of input we've gotten from the air agencies and others. And we've done some editing to try to take account of that, to increase the voluntariness, or to emphasize the voluntariness of this. But that doesn't mean that it's still not a really important issue. Feedback, there's something in the chat. Thank you, Lauren. A hard look at strategies and implementation. Absolutely, a hard look at the entire report would be very much appreciated. Tahira, with ACOM, do you have anything else to add on that? More
Yeah.
specifically, where we're looking for feedback.
Yeah, I think the strategies and the implementation, looking at that section, so that I think that was chapter 5, would be really helpful if you were trying to focus your efforts. And I've done a couple of notes as well, but I think that's pretty much where the action is supposed to come from, you know. And if there's any simpler way that you feel like could communicate some of these concepts better, or if something is still unclear, you know, there are no stupid questions. If it's unclear, it's our fault. So please let us know. We're definitely looking to make it as useful as possible.
Okay, great. Another question, deadline for comments, March 14. I think that's right. I think that's what we agreed to at the last subcommittee meeting. Yes, much encouraged by that time. And I mean, if there's anything really important after that, say before, you know, April, you know, if you're looking at it again and you say, oh, this is really, really important, you know, obviously we'll take those comments. But I think we're really asking for folks to try to meet the March 14 date.
Okay. Well, I just want to acknowledge ACOM, plus our co-chairs, Dave Snyder and Kristen Mink, have been really critical in this. And we've had really good participation from the subcommittee members. So I think it's been a really good process. If we don't have anything else on this, just thank ACOM and Dave for this presentation for today. And I guess we'll move on to our last item.
Before we
So,
stop,
Before we move on,
yep,
Chair
yes.
DeNoga, just had a question. Given that March 14th,
absolutely.
given that March 14th date for submitting comments or questions about the action plan, how are members of ACPAC, for example, going to be able to respond to this? I mean, I believe the plan is going to be presented to us at our March 17th meeting, but I just have concern there about the timing for deadline deadline for submitting questions.
I think Jen or Jeff could probably answer that.
I can actually answer that. William, the action plan was sent to ACPAC on Monday.
Okay.
You also would have received it in preparation of the EJ subcommittee that was on Friday, as you, Julie Kimmel, who was the former chair, and as well as Reverend Nars are on the EJ subcommittee, but the full ACPAC committee does have the action plan.
Okay, thank you.
And Reverend Norris has been very active.
Yes.
Yes.
I bet that's not a surprise.
Yes.
Okay. With that, any other questions? I don't see any. I'm looking around. Okay. So moving on to our last item, number 6, I want to introduce Kate Daly and Matt Myers from the Fairfax County Office of Environment and Energy Coordination. The Board of Supervisors has approved a countywide initiative to provide residents with this opportunity to turn in gas-powered lawn equipment for cleaner electric models. Ms. Daly and Mr. Myers are with us today to brief members on the initiative. I see we got the PowerPoint coming up. Kate and Matt, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for having us. My name is Kate Daly. I'm an environmental analyst with Fairfax County's Office of Environmental and Energy Coordination, or OEEC, and joined by Matt Myers, Division Manager in OEEC. And our office is tasked with leading the county's interdepartmental work on environmental and energy plans, policies, and programs, including climate mitigation and resilience, and leading community outreach and engagement efforts on climate action. So as part of our work this year, we'll be partnering with Clean Air Partners on a gas lawn tool exchange program, which we'll touch on in a few slides. We first wanted to provide some background on Fairfax County's efforts to reduce gas-powered lawn care equipment in its own operations, promote the use of electric alternatives in the community, and how these efforts play into our work with Clean Air Partners. So moving away from gas-powered lawn care equipment, especially gas-powered leaf blowers, has long been a priority for Fairfax County's Board of Supervisors and many within our community as they recognize the impacts to climate, local air pollution, noise, and health impacts. When we developed our community-wide energy and climate action plan, or CCAP, in 2021, the community members that were involved in that pushed for inclusion of an action that would incorporate electrification of off-road equipment, such as leaf blowers. And so when the CCAP was adopted, which has an overall goal of community-wide carbon neutrality by 2050, it does have that action to expand EV use with off-road equipment. And then as a follow-up in late 2021, our Board of Supervisors passed a board matter that called for a number of actions, including a plan to discontinue the purchase of gas-powered leaf blowers within county operations, a plan to update our procurement processes to incentivize use of electric blowers with county contractors, and to encourage and promote the phase out of gas-powered lawn equipment in the community. And just as an update on the operational front, we have several agencies working on this for facilities management, Department of Public Works, and our Park Authority. And they've converted about half of the blowers that we own. They're also working on converting, mowers, string trimmers, hedge trimmers, and the like. And our contractors are making progress in this arena as well.
Hey,
And
Kate, Kate, I'm sorry, I
Oh,
just want to stop. It looks like we're seeing your PowerPoint, but not the current slide. Is that right for everybody?
oh. So you don't see public outreach and engagement efforts?
No, it's just hanging out on your PowerPoint window with the first slide still selected.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, hold on. I wonder, Jen, if you might be able to share for me.
Yes, Kate, we'll have somebody on our end share.
Okay.
Can everybody see?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you could go ahead and just skip to slide 4. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So we've been sharing our operational efforts to transition to electric lawn care equipment with the public to encourage similar efforts within the community. The county has a dedicated webpage outlining the impacts of gas-powered equipment on the climate, air quality, and public health. We also promote the transition to electric lawn care equipment. And we have one-pagers, screenshots of which are captured here in English and Spanish, which we take to our outreach and tabling events along with other resources on climate action. And one such tabling event we participated in last year was Clean Air Partners Gas-Powered Tool Exchange Program, specifically their May event at the Ace Hardware store in the city of Fairfax. And that leads us to the exchange program, which we're excited to talk about with you all today. And if you could switch to the next slide, please. Yeah, so hoping to ramp up our engagement efforts in this arena, we started talking with Clean Air Partners late last year about how we might be able to partner with them on an exchange program and related promotional work in 2025. And just last week, the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors approves an MOU with Clean Air Partners for an electric lawn tools promotion and gas lawn tools exchange program. So we're still working on the specifics of the program, but our MOU allows for a broad range of activities with Clean Air Partners, including some of the bullet points I'll dive into here. First, we'll be able to partner with Clean Air Partners on their spring gas lawn tools exchange program at participating Ace Hardware stores, where residents are provided vouchers to exchange a gas-powered leaf blower, mower, or string trimmer in exchange for an electric alternative, and the gas-powered equipment is then recycled. By partnering and contributing to the program, we're able to ensure additional product availability for Fairfax County residents. We'll be working with Clean Air Partners on the 2 exchange event weekends they mentioned earlier in the meeting at the locations that are close to Fairfax County. The MOU also allows us to collaborate with Clean Air Partners on pop-up exchange events in Fairfax County. One such event we're looking at this year is an annual event that's put on in our area called Healthy Together Fairfax in Franconia Park. And that's an event focused on physical and environmental health. So we think that's a great connection to this program and kind of highlighting the air quality and health impacts when you switch to electric lawn care equipment. So we'll be tabling there to provide some educational materials and vouchers because it coincides with the second exchange program weekend that Clean Air Partners is putting on. Some other pop-up exchange ideas we've been discussing with Clean Air Partners. The county has a transfer station where residents can bring their recycling and waste, and that might be a good opportunity to have an exchange event and recycling event for their gas-powered lawn care equipment. We've also talked about maybe utilizing some of our county-sponsored farmers markets that are held throughout the county, just to make sure we're kind of spreading the program work out across Fairfax County, which is pretty broad. And then most of our work is going to be focused in the spring time, but we do have flexibility to extend it. we're looking at an annual event in October. It's a climate action conference where residents are connected to certain climate actions they can take and incentives they can opt to make climate actions in their home and save money, and I think that would be a good connection to this program as well. So looking into that. And then another action the MOU provides for is general marketing and promotion, and the final bullet, direct communication to low-income households. So in keeping with the county's One Fairfax policy, which is our racial and social equity policy, we recognize and are hoping to mitigate air quality and associated health impacts on our more vulnerable residents. So we're evaluating some of these pop-up exchange events in Fairfax County by looking at areas where this program might have a higher impact based on existing vulnerabilities. And we have some good mapping tools internally that can help us with this work, the Fairfax County's Vulnerability Index and Communities of Opportunity Dashboard. We're looking into a couple of other ways to make this work more equitable. One approach we're evaluating is using a sliding scale voucher for county residents for the voucher exchange program. That could be based on income or participation in an income qualifying program such as SNAP. Something we need to dig into a little bit more about how feasible that might be, but we just are thinking about ensuring those who need the financial incentive are able to receive it on a one-to-one exchange basis, while others might receive a partial voucher. But again, that's something we're still exploring. And since many of our residents might be impacted by gas-powered lawn care equipment through their work, we also want to explore ways that we could expand this program in the future. It's probably not going to be for this spring, but looking forward, how we can expand it to the commercial sector to reduce the health impacts on landscaping professionals. There's some existing efforts in the region, which might be a good entry point. For instance, our own Park Authority has partnered with some local nonprofits in the past couple of years to offer conferences in both English and Spanish for landscaping professionals. So that might be a good place to engage with individuals in the sector on the impacts of using gas-powered lawn care equipment and better understand what some of the barriers might be in switching to electric alternatives. So again, lots left to finalize in the next few weeks with Clean Air Partners as we gear up for the spring. But that's an overview of what we're planning this year and looking forward. Matt, if I missed anything, please feel free to jump in, but otherwise, we're happy to take any questions.
Okay, well, thanks, Kate. That was a wonderful presentation. Let's look in the chat. We have a question from Lauren. Did the county have to pay for these vouchers?
Yes, so when we passed our MOU, we set aside about $200,000 for this program that is not going to be spent all this year. So, we anticipate using that throughout this year and maybe next spring. But that is the amount we reserved for this work.
Other questions? Anyone else? Okay. Well, I'll just say I'm envious of the program that you got there. It looks really great, and it's one of those things where the counties do need, or the cities do need to come up with the funds to make it work. I see Allen Hugh College Park. Is this a coupon or a straight up replacement?
Yeah, so it's if we get people at an outreach event, for instance, we'll give them a voucher and they can take it to the participating Ace Hardware store. Well, they'll be able to receive a one-to-one replacement. They'll bring in their gas-powered equipment and exchange it for an electric alternative.
So Alan, is a coupon that gets you back a brand new mower. Okay, anyone else, please? Well, with that, once again, thank you, Kate. Thank you, Matt. Congratulations on a great program. And at this point, I think that concludes our meeting unless I'm missing something. And if not, then the next MWAC meeting is scheduled for May 28th. And we'll let members know whether this can be virtual or in person. Thanks to everyone for participating. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussions? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Have a great day and see you.